No matter what kind of endeavours Dwayne Johnson gets himself involved in, Rocky always seems to find success. It'll be interesting to see how his recent XFL partnership will pan out, but anyway, the point is, professionally, The Rock has done really well for himself. A key moment in the career of the Great One was when The Rock joined the Nation of Domination, effectively turning The Rock into a bad guy and kickstarting The Rock's persona that we all know and love today. If The Rock didn't turn heel and join the Nation, who knows how his career and indeed his whole life would have panned out. Rocky Maivia was stuck in a really bad place in the World Wrestling Federation trying to be a nice guy when the wrestling business in itself was evolving into a much edgier and more contemporary form of entertainment. The days of smiling at the fans and being an upstanding sportsman were fading fast, and the fans were turning on Rocky Maivia after only being in the company for less than a year. If Rocky kept going down the same path, he would have been torn to shreds and left behind, but thankfully, The Rock got a chance to show what he could really do when he joined the Nation of Domination, and this is what we'll be looking at in today's video. Rocky Maivia won his first singles championship on February 13th, 1997, beating Hunter Hearst Helmsley for the Intercontinental Championship. Not only is this important because it's Rocky's first big title win, but this match also gives us an example of how audiences were reacting to Rocky during this time period. Hunter Hearst Helmsley had no redeeming qualities as a character, yet the fans in attendance cheered for Triple H while booing The Rock. What was supposed to be a landmark night in Dwayne Johnson's career turned out to be a perfect example of everything that was wrong with Rocky Maivia, and also it's a perfect example of how wrestling fans were evolving during 1997. The days of the clean-cut babyface were quickly fading away, and Rocky Maivia was stuck with a gimmick that made wrestling fans roll their eyes. There were a lot of fans who wanted Rocky to lose, they wanted Rocky to fail, and they even chanted things such as "Die Rocky Die." Still, The Rock persevered, defending the championship against guys like Triple H, Bret Hart, the Sultan and Savio Vega before dropping the title to Owen Hart on April 28th, 1997. From here, The Rock would suffer a knee injury during a match with Mankind, and Rocky would get forced out of action. While The Rock was recovering, he received a phone call from Jim Ross, and JR asked Dwayne Johnson how he would feel about turning heel and joining the Nation of Domination. Rocky said he loved the idea. It really had to be done. If Rocky Maivia continued on as a smiling and happy babyface, then his career wouldn't have had nearly as much longevity. The Nation of Domination faction within the WWF had been going through some changes. Members had come and gone, with Savio Vega and Crush leaving the group to form their own factions. In August of 1997, the group consisted of leader Farouk, D'Lo Brown and Ahmed Johnson. Johnson was plagued by injuries during this point of his career, and the decision was made to remove Ahmed from the Nation and replace him with Rocky Maivia. The heel turn happened on the August 11th, 1997 episode of Raw. Farouk had a match with chains from the DOA, and during the match, The Rock jumped into the ring to deliver the rock bottom to Farouk's opponent. Rocky had joined the Nation of Domination, and from this point on, week after week, The Rock would begin climbing the ladder in the World Wrestling Federation as a brash and cocky heel. The next week on Raw, The Rock requested a little mic time to explain his actions, and The Rock got in the ring and he said, "I got 3 words, die Rocky die. That's the gratitude I get from you pieces of crap for all my blood, my sweat and my tears. You know, this isn't about the colour of my skin, it's about respect. I became the youngest Intercontinental Champion in WWF history, and what did it get me? In arenas across the country, I heard chants of Rocky sucks. Well, Rocky Maivia is a lot of things, but sucks isn't one of them." Rocky Maivia and the new Nation of Domination lives, breathes and dies respect, and we will earn respect by any means necessary. Rocky's run with the Nation started off a little shaky with a loss to Ahmed Johnson on the September 22nd episode of Raw, but Rocky, along with D'Lo and Kama, were able to defeat the Legion of Doom at In Your House Bad Blood. Again, things looked a little ropey when Rocky was defeated by Davey Boy Smith the night after the Bad Blood pay-per-view, but really, the losses didn't matter at all. The problem people had with Rocky Maivia before he joined the Nation was that his character was bland, but since joining the Nation, Rocky was already looking a lot more comfortable both in the ring and of course on the mic. Almost immediately, Rocky Maivia was the standout superstar in the nation. Fans now had a reason to chant Rocky sucks, and The Rock used that same crowd response to fuel his character. With Rock becoming noticeably better on the mic and in the ring, the decision was made to give Rocky a run with the Intercontinental title. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the IC champion at the time, was getting prepped up for the world title, and so The Rock and Steve Austin would begin a short rivalry that done an incredible lot to push Rocky to the next level. It all started the night after the 1997 Survivor Series. Steve Austin had just defeated Owen Hart to become the new IC champion, and the very first man to challenge Austin was Rocky Maivia, who was now officially beginning to call himself The Rock. The Rock said he was the greatest IC champion of all time during his run in early 1997, and the IC belt would be coming back to The Rock. It was just a matter of time. The next week on Raw, while Austin was busy with other members of the nation, The Rock swooped in and he stole the Intercontinental Championship. So the rivalry was all about Austin getting his belt back. Many people will remember the November 24th, 1997 episode of Raw. Rocky was in the ring with the nation cutting a promo. The Rock sent the nation backstage to fix the arena lighting and remove the words "Rocky sucks" from the Titantron. The Rock then got a message on his pager that said 316. Rocky's reaction was absolutely perfect, and the Texas Rattlesnake attacked Rock from behind. Excellent work here. Steve Austin was able to defeat The Rock at In Your House D-Generation X, and the IC title went back to its rightful owner. The match was pretty chaotic though. A second referee made the 3 count while the original official waved for the match to end via disqualification. And so the next night on Raw, Vince McMahon ordered a rematch between Rocky and Austin. Since Steve Austin had bigger fish to fry, the Rattlesnake instead forfeited the IC title, and The Rock became a 2-time Intercontinental Champion without even pinning Stone Cold. Again, the wins and losses didn't really matter here because The Rock had done an incredible job of building up his new cocky persona during this rivalry with Austin. Fans were now slowly starting to get behind The Rock because he was proving to be an extremely entertaining superstar. Austin ended up stealing the IC title from The Rock to get a little payback, and who could forget Stone Cold throwing Rocky's IC title off a bridge as Rocky watched on the Titantron. Shortly after becoming the new IC champion, The Rock's self-confidence was thrown into orbit. Rocky was now the biggest star of the nation, and he remained blissfully unaware of how annoying he was becoming to the nation's leader, Farouk. While Farouk was much more straight and militant, Rock was a show-off. The Rock felt like he was a big star, and Farouk began noticing that The Rock was kind of falling out of line. What's interesting about this though is that even as a cocky heel, The Rock was so entertaining, and it wasn't only The Rock who was slowly realising that he was bigger than the nation. The fans began noticing too. A standout performance at the 1998 Royal Rumble went a long way in legitimising The Rock. Not only did Rocky successfully defend his IC title against Ken Shamrock after outsmarting the world's most dangerous man, but The Rock entered the Royal Rumble match at number 4, and he lasted all the way to the end before getting eliminated by winner Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was quite easy to tell that the WWF were going to get behind Rocky after this performance here at the Rumble, and the first step to move Rocky up the cards was to make him the leader of the nation. While The Rock feuded with Ken Shamrock over the IC title, trouble began brewing inside the nation. The group were fighting among themselves as Farouk's leadership began coming into question. Before getting to Mania, the nation, consisting of The Rock, D'Lo, Kama and Farouk, were defeated by Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson and 8-Ball and Chains of the DOA. Rocky tapped out to the ankle lock to end the match, and after the bout, The Rock shared words with Farouk before shoving the nation's leader and walking off. Farouk demanded that The Rock return to the ring, and Rocky came back to reluctantly raise his fist with the nation. To show Farouk that there were no hard feelings, The Rock gave the nation's leader a gift the next night on Raw. It was a giant picture of Rocky holding his precious Intercontinental Championship. Farouk wasn't very pleased with this gift, resulting in Ron Simmons destroying the portrait after losing his match with Steve Blackman. Keep in mind that The Rock had given the other nation members brand new Rolex watches before presenting Farouk with the picture. In the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 14 then, the Nation continued to have issues, mainly due to differences between Rocky and Farouk. On the Raw episode before WrestleMania, The Rock hit Farouk with a steel chair and Rocky played it off like an accident, pretty much confirming that there were going to be some changes within the Nation of Domination very soon. At WrestleMania 14, The Rock defended his IC title against Ken Shamrock. Shamrock made The Rock tap out, and so Ken became the new Intercontinental Champion. Shamrock wouldn't let go of the ankle lock. Nation members tried to pull Shamrock away from Rocky, but it was no good. Finally, Farouk came down to the ring, but instead of helping Rocky, Farouk walked away. In the end, the referee's decision was reversed because Shamrock wouldn't let go of the hold, and the world's most dangerous man also attacked officials, and so the belt went back to Rocky, a fine way to get The Rock even more heat. The next night on Raw, The Rock and Farouk teamed up to take on Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock. The Rock wouldn't tag into the match, leaving the Nation's leader to take a loss. Farouk called The Rock back into the ring, a fight broke out between the two men, and just when it looked like the scuffle had been broke up, the other members of the Nation began attacking Farouk. The Rock returned to the ring to announce that he was now the ruler of the Nation of Domination, and so began a new era for the faction with Rocky as the top dog. With The Rock as the ruler of the Nation, the group began to change in a big way. In order to fit in with the WWF's blossoming Attitude Era, the Nation were able to ditch their old fall-in-line mentality, and each member was able to develop their characters with a bit more personality. The Nation's theme music was updated to sound a lot more up-to-date, and in general, the Nation just carried themselves with a lot more confidence and swagger. Naturally, the new Nation began a feud with former leader Farouk. Shamrock, Blackman and Farouk were able to beat Rocky, D'Lo and Mark Henry at the Unforgiven pay-per-view in April of 1998, but another massive change occurred the following night on Raw. Owen Hart turned his back on Ken Shamrock and Owen became the co-leader of the Nation. So now the Nation consisted of Kama, D'Lo, Mark Henry and leaders Owen Hart and The Rock. Owen at the time was feuding with Triple H, and Triple H had just become the leader of his own D-Generation X army. This resulted in the Nation feuding with DX, and over time, Owen Hart would get removed from the Triple H rivalry and The Rock would get slotted in. Rocky and Hunter had a non-title IC champ versus European champ matchup on the May 25th episode of Raw, and it was evident that the two men worked extremely well together, much better than their work in early 1997. The match ended in a double countout, but there was definitely something here, and the WWF was smart to move forward with more Triple H versus Rock matchups. The two men would meet again in a King of the Ring quarter-final match, which The Rock won, and then Rocky and Triple H had an entertaining 2 out of 3 falls match at Fully Loaded 1998. There's a reason why nobody really talks about the 2 out of 3 falls Intercontinental title match at Fully Loaded, and it's an understandable reason too. While Rock and Hunter performed well, the bout is completely riddled with interference from both the Nation and D-Generation X. While it's still entertaining to watch and it's still a fun bout, 2 out of the 3 falls were gained due to interference, meaning we didn't really get to see a true winner. D'Lo caused a distraction that allowed Rocky to score the first fall, Chyna nailed The Rock with a DDT, and this got Triple H the second fall, and at the very end Triple H performed the pedigree, but the time limit expired, meaning the match ended in a draw and The Rock kept his IC title. I still think it's a good match and it's still recommended, but things would get even better. The Rock versus Triple H feud would carry on into SummerSlam, and in front of a sellout crowd at Madison Square Garden, the two men would have one of the best matches of the year, a ladder match to determine the new Intercontinental Champion. During this time period, ladder matches were much more rare than what they are today. Before SummerSlam 1998, the last ladder match we had saw on television was 3 years prior at SummerSlam 95, so this IC title bout did feel quite special. On top of this, both The Rock and Triple H were on the brink of main event status. Both men had done some tremendous work inside the ring, and both men had a good amount of fan support, leading to the SummerSlam ladder match becoming extremely competitive. Both Triple Triple H and Rocky were gunning for the main event. They were aiming to become big players in the World Wrestling Federation, and so both men went into SummerSlam aiming to steal the show and put on a performance that would help elevate them to the next level. This was about rising up the ranks. Triple H and The Rock may have had a common goal, and the two men would obviously work together to create good matches, but they were also working for themselves here. It really was that competitive. Rocky said, "I think we both knew at the time that there was more, not just more for us to achieve, but more for us to sink our teeth into. We all have egos and some are more healthy than others. When we got in the ring, we checked it at the door, and when you see our matches, you'll see a fluidity to them. There was a lot of trust there and there was a lot of desire. When you have that dynamic, good things are going to happen." Triple H said of the latter match, "I think our personal and professional rivalry pushed us to do things that with anybody else we wouldn't have done. The latter matches had a high-flying and daredevil aspect of them, and Rock and I aren't big on high places or flying, I think. We changed the perception of that match. It was much more of a brawl." The ladder match at SummerSlam 1998 is pretty much The Rock's final big match as the leader of the nation, and if you haven't seen it, make sure you put it on your list. Like Triple H mentioned, this isn't a ladder match filled with big spots off the top of the ladder and things of that nature. Instead, it's an all-out fight. The ladder is used plenty of times as a weapon, of course, and again, just like Triple H said, it's a brawl. It's one of my favourite matches of 1998, an all-out slugfest for 25 minutes or so, but in the end, Triple H scores the win, even though I wanted Rocky to retain at the time. I still think it's a fantastic bout that every wrestling fan needs to see. In the same manner as Steve Austin a year prior, The Rock now had bigger fish to fry. Letting go of the IC title meant that Rock could now focus on the WWF Championship, so even though Triple H defeated The Rock at SummerSlam, it was The Rock who was first in line for the main event push. It was clear that The Rock had outgrown the nation by this point. He really was that over. It was decided that The Rock's journey towards the WWF title would not include the nation by his side, and so plans were put in place for The Rock to leave the group. We could see the cracks begin to form on the September 14th episode of Raw when the nation weren't very pleased with The Rock giving out orders. The other members felt that Rock was becoming a little too pushy, and along with this, The Rock was already getting prepped for the main event picture. Rock defeated Mankind and Ken Shamrock in a triple threat cage match at the Breakdown pay-per-view, and The Rock was named the #1 contender for the WWF title. D'Lo and Mark Henry approached Rocky on the October 12th episode of Raw, saying that The Rock was acting like he was too good for the nation, and later on in the evening, D'Lo and Henry attacked The Rock during a tag team match featuring Steve Austin and The Rock taking on the Brothers of Destruction. The Rock had now left the nation, Owen Hart had retired, and storyline, all that was left was D'Lo and Henry, and while these two would still team up together, the nation was now completely finished. Rocky was defeated by Mark Henry at the Judgment Day 1998 pay-per-view, but it didn't really matter. The People's Champ would go on to win the WWF Championship the following month at the 1998 Survivor Series. And that was a brief look at The Rock and the Nation, an awesome time in The Rock's career where Dwayne Johnson would break out and begin evolving into the insanely successful entertainer we are now all familiar with. As stated earlier, The Rock's heel turn and his time in the Nation should never be overlooked when we assess Dwayne Johnson's rise to superstardom. It was incredibly important for The Rock to be himself a little more within the WWF, and his days as Rocky Maivia simply didn't allow Johnson to do that. It sure would be interesting to see how The Rock's career would have turned out if he hadn't joined the nation. Many people would say that Rocky would have found another way to reach the top, but I wouldn't bet on it. All's well that ends well, though. Not only would Rock win the WWF title multiple times throughout the years, but his rise as one of Hollywood's biggest actors has also been something to behold. I truly believe it all started when he turned heel in the WWF and when he joined the Nation of Domination. As always, thanks for watching.